Welcome back to and Another Thing, your favorite news and politics podcast, your favorite news and politics, I guess, YouTube channel. I don't know what it's turned into. We don't do the YouTube videos anymore for you guys. I don't know why. We just stopped doing it. I didn't like... Okay, so I've been using this video editing software, and safe to say, it's probably the worst investment I've made. I'm not going to name it on the air because we're not here in the business of naming names. But I will just say, awful investment. Absolutely terrible. Never worked well. Would shut down constantly. I'd be in the middle of editing, would shut down. So I just got frustrated and I just said, we're not going to do it anymore. So for now, until the masses start screaming for it again, and the masses were screaming for it, don't get me wrong. But they are not so much anymore. The screaming has subsided. No YouTube. Just an audio link. So you can check us out on YouTube. Give us a subscribe over there. Check out the audio link while you're in between other videos, while you're doing your YouTubing. Give us a subscription. Leave us comments. It's a good place. YouTube's a good place for you to leave your comments on the podcast, to ask us your questions. Say what you will. Maybe contradict me. Maybe undermine me. Undermine me in the comments below. But you can do that on YouTube. Give us a follow there. After you do that, do us a big favor, though. I need you to do me a favor, though, and go over to Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you're getting your podcast these days. Give us a subscribe there. If you can leave us a rating, leave us a rating. If you can leave us a comment, leave us a comment. I don't know if you can do that on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, but I know that you can leave ratings. You can leave us stars, I believe. You can leave stars on Apple Podcasts. Can you leave stars on Spotify? Or can you just heart it? I'm pretty sure you can heart us. I don't know. Am I a metrics man? No. That's why I have Bert, our producer. He's a man of tech. You know, he talks to the printers constantly. Bert, our producer, he's the analytics side of things. He's the one who tells me what is what. Giovanna's here to keep us on track today. Your host, Vince Petrone. We have a loaded show for you today. We're going to do headlines. We're going to talk about the town halls. We're going to talk about how the government is indoctrinating or going to attempt to indoctrinate the kids. Shout out to the kids about to get this patriotic education. Lucky you guys. We'll talk about that, and then we'll wrap it up, and we'll go into the weekend, and we'll come back next Friday, and we'll do it all again on our 102nd episode of and Another Thing, which is my long-winded way of saying happy 101st episode of and Another Thing to all the other things out there listening, and to those of us here in the studio. Last week was our 100th episode. I just didn't feel right celebrating last week in just lieu of everything, you know? Just everything going on, it just didn't feel right to celebrate. And I also... And it was your birthday last Friday. Did we give you a birthday shout-out? Last Saturday. Did I give you a birthday shout-out last Friday on the pod? I don't think so. Well, birthday shout-out to Giovanna. Turn the big 2-6. Woo! I almost said 2-5 for a second. I was like, no, 2-6. 2-6 this year.
Young,
vibrant, young. What's my Twitter bio? Vigorous. The vigorous 26. So happy birthday to Giovanna, who had her birthday last Saturday. We took a walk around the cemetery. We ordered. What do we have for food? We had barbecues. We had mimosas. We had mother's mimosas, and we had ube cakes. Loves her ubes. I still don't understand what ube is, but Giovanna.
It's a purple yam.
I don't get it. How's it a purple? How's it happen? First off, how's it happen? A purple yam. What color is the yam? I thought yams were orange.
Yeah, some are purple.
Some. Are you saying some are purple, but they have summer purple?
Some are purple.
Some are purple.
I don't know what to tell you. Ube is a purple yam. It's just what it is. It's very delicious.
And I think what I don't understand is how do we describe the flavor of ube? Sweet like what though? Sweet like because it's not like chocolate. It's not like vanilla. It's not like.
No, it's just good.
It's just I agree. I agree. It is very good. I'm not saying that ube is not good.
I don't know what it tastes like. I can't describe it.
It's yam and it's good. And they make these bunts. And Giovanna likes the bunts, so we got her a bunt. We had a birthday bunt and had a nice little Saturday. And that was how we commemorated last weekend. So we didn't really have time to celebrate the 100th episode, so we are celebrating the 101st this week and the 102nd next week. So thank you again for joining us for all 100 and X amount of episodes. Anything else? Bert's on Twitter now. Bert has... I don't have it in front of me. Bert, I'm going to have to pull up your Twitter so I can plug you, buddy. Giovanna started... Well, excuse me. Bert asked Giovanna to start him a Twitter account. I think like 4 days ago or like beginning of the week, he was like, Mom, Dad, parents, please let me get a Twitter. I want to be my own cat. I want to know the world. I want to be a man of it. If I am Bert the Beans. Is it Bert the Beans? I have your notifications turned on. That way I never miss a tweet, and you should too. Bert the Bean Man, there he is. Go give him a follow on Twitter. Bert the Bean Man, @BeanBert. He follows me. Select following. I'm honored. Only following 50. I'm very honored, Bert. While being followed by 442. That's a big honor for me. Thank you. I know. Go check him out on Twitter. Again, he's amassed more followers in 4 days than I have in about 12 years of Twitter. Definitely 10 years. I've definitely been on it for 10 years now, but more followers than me in 4 days. He is a real dynamo. He's a real superstar. Everybody loves him. Go check him out on Twitter. So, you happy, Bert? Does that satisfy you for this week? Jesus. He said I have to do it every week now that he's on Twitter. I have to plug his Twitter. So, he said it has to be good. He said I can't just do a half-ass plug. It has to be decent. It has to be personalized, and it has to have a different spin every week. So, I don't know what the repercussions are of me not doing it the right way, but those are his demands, and he's the one who produces the show. So, anyway, there's that for you. You happy, Bert?
Big money Bertram. You took a big deep breath, did you?
Yeah, I did.
Did a big sigh for you.
Big sigh for me. Yeah, thanks, Dad. Mailed it in on that one. Anyway, let's dive on in for some headlines. Did I cover everything? I can't hear me through the wall. Can you hear me when you're in there?
Not clearly.
Interesting.
I've also been
Constantly working.
trying.
I'll leave you alone. I'm sorry. Giovanna's working on her own projects today, and I keep bugging her. I keep going back to her for whatever, and she's working on her own stuff. I got stuff. All right. Diving on into some headlines here. We have our first Trump administration or former Trump administration person to say that they're not going to vote for him because they think he's trying to kill people with his coronavirus response. It's a former Pence aide who is quoted saying in an interview, the president's rhetoric and his own attacks against people in his administration trying to do the work, as well as the, again, word we haven't ever seen before, promulgation of false narratives and incorrect information of the virus have made this ongoing response a failure, said in an interview. So that is our first, where's her name at? Olivia Troy worked as Homeland Security, Counterterrorism, and Coronavirus Advisor to Vice President Pence for 2 years and has had that to say, said she'll be voting for Joe Biden. It's the first person in the administration to come out and say that, so that's kind of good, kind of a big deal. We hope it's the door for more to walk out and say, hey, this guy's nuts, look how crazy he is, he wants you all dead, he doesn't care about you. I work with him every day. He cares more about his shoes than he does about the American people. So anyway, that was a big headline yesterday, got a lot of play on the internet, and that's what everybody cares about these days, what's the internet talking about. So let me go back and check some more headlines for you guys. A federal judge temporarily has blocked the Postal Service operational changes amid concerns about mail slowdowns and the November elections, which is really exciting because there's also been more documents coming out in the past few weeks. Took a nice slug of water there for you guys. Really quality podcast we run here week in and week out. We really put airs on for you guys. What was I just talking about? The Postal Service. So we've already had a lot more documents. More has come out over the few weeks with the ongoing House investigation into what's going on in the Postal Service with Lou DeJoy's appointment and everything that's happened in the wake of his appointment, from the dismantling of mail sorting machines to the purposeful, intentional slowing down of mail and limiting of resources. Just everything that the administration has done with the appointment of Lou DeJoy to make it harder for people to vote by mail in the upcoming election. We keep learning more about the operation. We keep learning more about who said to do what. So a judge finally ruled that everything has to be reversed, so I believe that means that all the machines that have been taken apart and taken out of these facilities have to be put back in, obviously re-put together, which might be a pain in the butt. Real pain in the bottom for a lot of these people, but luckily those will be back in service, and that's what kind of stuff we're talking about. Because I know DeJoy had said that he would put a hold to any operational changes at the Postal Service for until after the election, but that didn't undo anything. So now I believe this judge's order will start to undo some things. So that's really, really good there. Biden leads Trump by 9 percentage points nationally, 51-42. That's according to the Washington Post's average of polls. Biden's margin is smaller in key states, 8 points in Michigan, 7 in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, 5 in Arizona, and 1 in Florida. Interesting thing about Florida, and it's been talked about a lot, is how Biden is underperforming with Latinos, which, I mean, okay. Just generally speaking, I don't know how anybody still votes for Trump, regardless of who they are, regardless of anything. So it's always shocking to see a community of people, like a good, honest, hardworking community of people, side with him to a point. And I know it's not like a big percentage of people or anything. It's not a big percentage. It's close enough on the margins that it's not like a runaway or anything. But I think it's more speaking to the Democratic Party than it is to Donald Trump, because there's obviously some kind of disconnect with Latino voters in Florida and Latino voters in other states like, why can't I think of states? Nevada. Thank you. Like Nevada, where we know, though he's not performing as well, he still outperforms, and by he I mean Biden, still outperforms Trump with Latino voters in states like Texas and Nevada. And I don't know, those are the only two I saw, aside from Florida. So it's interesting to see where that disconnect falls and what that disconnect is with that voter bloc, because you don't have that problem in other states. It's still closer in other states than it should be. And I know a lot of people had talked about how Bernie not getting the nomination would be really alienating to a lot of first-time Latino voters, regardless of their age. And I know there's a lot of old folk in Florida, so maybe that has some to do with it. Maybe they feel alienated by the party because of what happened in the primary, or they just feel left behind by policy. I know we keep hearing about abolishing ICE, and nothing happens when these communities still get attacked. And everything that we've learned about from the detention centers in the past 2 weeks, they're doing forced hysterectomies on the women in these camps. It's a real mess, and I would understand why Latino voters, and I mean just generally, but Latino voters specifically, who see their community under attack so often and so intentionally by the government, and they keep hearing these calls from government officials and Democratic leaders, but yet nothing changes. I mean, Chuck Schumer talks about kids in cages, Nancy Pelosi talks about kids in cages, but nothing ever changes. And I understand why that would be alienating and move a lot of should be, if you look at economic factors and countless other factors, what should line up as Democratic voters and reliable Democratic voters, why they would struggle with that block in varying states. And I know that Florida is a weird place. There are some states that are their own countries, and I believe Florida is one of them. If there was ever a state to kind of create its own, if there's a state that is more its culture than Florida, I want someone to show me a state that is more its culture than Florida, because I mean, Florida has its own reputation, and it constantly lives up to that reputation. New Jersey has a reputation, but I will say New Jersey isn't always Jersey Shore, New Jersey. I'm just going to say that. I've grown to, despite us not spending really much time at all in New Jersey, aside from your college days.
I spent 4 years.
You spent 4 years there. But you can attest, therefore, that it's not just the Jersey Shore constantly.
Do people still think that?
I think people still think that. I think that's still a very large stereotype. That's still definitely a big stereotype. Definitely in my old neck of the woods. Definitely out
Very funny.
in like the Midwest and stuff. Absolutely, that's still the stereotype of the New Jersey world. It's not the what. Okay, how do you stereotype New Jersey, or how do you believe New Jersey is? This is the last time I'll bug you.
Oh, that's okay. New Jersey is just a big long strip of strip malls and suburbs. It's like
That's it.
It's like any other suburb, it's a little more. New Jersey actually does have the most amount of cars per capita, which is like kind of wild because you think it would be New York. But I remember when I started driving in New Jersey, it was a whole thing because the car insurance was going to be a lot more expensive because they said there's just so many cars in New Jersey. So, I mean, that's really the only thing that distinguishes them from a regular suburb. There's just a ton of strip malls.
It's just
a lot of hula hands. It's a lot of Joe Canals, discount liquor stores, and yeah.
That's it. And that's all.
The shore is that's the people that live on the shore are definitely different types of New Jerseyans.
Yeah.
The thing about New Jersey is like with many states, you can't generalize the whole state because people from North Jersey and people from South Jersey are very different type of people.
Right.
And people from the shore are very different type of people. So, it's like anywhere else.
Like anywhere else, except for Florida, because Florida pretty much embodies itself.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's our New Jersey take from our resident New Jersey expert, Giovanna, who lived in the state for 4 semesters.
8 semesters.
Oh, yeah, thank you. 8 semesters.
4 years.
4 years, thank you. Florida, what else do we have? Oh, a hot take here from the Post. Election night 2020 could go on for weeks. Oh, boy, really? Come on. What do you think? The most contested election in history so far, do we think they're just going to let it end on election night? We already know there's going to be the cheating aspect of things. That's why we're not going to, believe the polls or, read too much into, Biden being up 7 in Pennsylvania right now. And then, he could be up only 5 points next week. And they'll talk about the polls tightening. And we're not going to worry about how Trump was up in one Rasmussen poll by 1 point, I think, nationally last week. We're not going to worry about it. We're not going to talk about it. We're not here for that. But there's one naive thing that people still get caught up on. And it's that, and I hope most of us have come to this, to realize that Trump's not going to concede. That was quick. That was quick. Our lunch just got here. But anyway, it's really naive to think at this point that that anyone would think that we're going to have full election results on election night with how much absentee voting there's going to be, with how many people that are going to be doing the absentee vote and using absentee voting in replace of their usual voting because of the coronavirus. It's obviously going to take probably a week, 2 weeks. Who knows? That's probably naive of me to say that. It could be who knows how long until we have full results from November 3rd, from the November 3rd general election. Could be Christmas time by the time we have a winner. Who knows? I don't want to be alarmist. But there's always a very real possibility that Trump does not accept the results. We know he's not going to just concede. And I know that's been like the big worry and the big talk on Twitter and everywhere else is that maybe he won't accept the results. And we've had Roger Stone talk about how he should get ready to arm the military in the event that he has to stop a coup, and Mark Levin from the talk radio world has said the same thing, and you're starting to get more of these voices around the president saying these things about how he's going to have to be ready to fight against resistance to him winning a second term, or fight against Biden not accepting results or whatever. And we know they do a lot of projecting, but I don't know. I think it's a naive headline here from the Washington Post. Election night 2020 could go on for weeks. We know, man. We know, and we're not exactly looking forward to it. I'll talk about, in 2016, I spent my election night. I drank an entire bottle of wine in Ari's apartment. Shout out to... Was I living there? Was I living with Ari? Yes. That would have been... No, I would not have been living there at the time. Absolutely. That's whenever I was living up a couple blocks. I had my own place with my own man. Anyway. I spent my 2016 election night drinking a bottle of wine, eating small plates, and watching the world crumble to pieces. It was a good time. Could I do that for a week or a month nonstop? Absolutely not. No way to survive it. So hopefully it's not as long as it could be. Hopefully there's a way that we can get, and I'm not putting the election into doubt, full, accurate results relatively quickly, so we don't have to wait too long, and the suspense doesn't have to go on too long, and the narrative doesn't sit around on this is happening here, this happens here, blah, 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 blah. We don't have all these different contested states. I'm not looking forward to it, but it is a very real possibility because of just how deep into authoritarianism we have kind of slid. And we'll talk later on in the pod about how we're sprinting there right now, but we kind of slid deep enough now that, I mean, we just have to be ready for the fact that he's not going to concede, and it's not going to end probably... I don't know when this election is going to end. And it sucks, because it's been a very annoying election. If I see one more goddamn video of Kamala Harris coming out of a plane or a car or anything, and I like Kamala Harris. This isn't me saying I don't like Kamala Harris, but I'm tired of hearing about Kamala Harris's shoes. I'm tired of hearing about it. I don't care if she wore Timberlands to go visit the devastation of the wildfires in California. Instead of talking about the devastation of the wildfires in California and the impacts of climate change, here's everybody talking about her goddamn Timberland boots she's wearing in the woods. It's like, get out of here, guys. Come on. Anyway, I want this election to end, but it's naive to think that it ever will. Anyway, on to the fun parts of the election. I really enjoy the debates, and I really enjoy the actual campaign side of the election. I know election night's going to be nerve-wracking, but I have enjoyed the cycle enough, and it's been entertaining, and we're all having a good time, I think. But we had the town halls this week, and the town halls are my favorite because it's a chance for regular folk to ask real questions from their perspectives to each candidate. And I think that's a really refreshing thing to do, because usually we get just the canned 3 moderators and the candidates in a room full of some kind of audience, just an audience. And usually the audience is quiet, but we know that, I mean, we were watching the primaries, that went out the window, so I'm assuming during the general it would be an absolute mess. But I don't think they're going to have audiences for these debates this year. I don't think 2020 is going to have debate crowds regardless. But I like the town hall because the questions come, and I know from time to time the moderators will read a question from a viewer. They'll say, this question comes from such and such from Long River, Ohio. And they'll read the question and they have to answer it. And oh, yeah, it's really nice. But it's nice to have the question actually asked right there by the actual person, because there's nowhere to run, there's nowhere to hide. And we saw that a couple of times. from both candidates, but more so we saw it happen with Trump because obviously as the incumbent in a town hall setting, you have to play defense more, especially for this incumbent who has just made a mess everywhere he stepped, just continually shit the bed over and over again for 4 years straight. Just every choice he could have made that would have been the right choice, he chose to do the opposite thing of. And I know we spent the past 2 weeks talking about, you could argue the past 2 weeks had been a microcosm of Trump's presidency, just self-made messes the whole entire way. Gross inaction, worrying about the wrong things. I mean, he had a press conference this week where he gloated about Big Ten football coming back, talking about how he had been on the phone with the commissioner of the Big Ten and how he talked to all these schools in the Big Ten and how they had to work to get Big Ten football back by October, and all the work he did and how he should be getting praised for that. Whenever on that very same day, 286 people died of the coronavirus, and here he is gloating about how college football is going to be coming back. And by the way, we'd be remiss before moving on here and talking about the rest of why the town halls are great, since we're on the topic of college sports and football and the Big Ten and all of this and the president voting and all that. Everything comes to a head at some point anymore. University of Georgia, the Bulldogs. I'm not going to give a shout out to the Dogs. Not on this pod, at least. University of Georgia put out a statement saying that they weren't going to be holding their in-person voting this year because of fears of the coronavirus. Okay, whatever. Not great. Hate it, in fact. In fact, makes me very mad that they're doing that, because that's a polling place that a lot of students rely on. And a lot of students, especially now, we're going to probably be relying on that more than ever, because I'm pretty sure Georgia's not doing a big vote by mail push, because we know Brian Kemp, their governor, is notorious for putting the fix in on elections. So anything that we know would hurt him, he's not going to do. So this on-campus voting site in Georgia at University of Georgia, obviously, it's going to impact a lot of young voters and a lot of what probably would be Democratic voters, which is, I'm sure, why the state-funded University of Georgia, is choosing to close their polling place whenever they could very well... Whenever they could very well just keep it open, honestly. Everyone else is keeping theirs open. We have a school around the corner here, and I know that we're in bleep here in New York City, but, and I know it's different ideologically, it's a school, they're gonna keep their polling place open, so why not at Georgia? I mean, come on. Anyway, but what's even more enraging about it is that University of Georgia is going to be holding football games, and not only are they going to be having the football games, we're fine with the football games happening. We're not great with it. We have our concerns, but as long as there's no fans, we think stays amongst the players. Okay. Makes me feel better, I guess. It's not great to keep a virus living and breathing and going on, and the less people that get it, the less life it has. We know that. And it's not great because the college football players don't get paid. There's a lot of pitfalls to college football happening this season, and it stinks because football was supposed to actually be decent this season, and they're playing, and they played really well last week. So I don't want to say I'm not going to watch any more college football, because I fully intend on watching more college football. But anyway, at least they're not doing what's going on in Georgia. Georgia's having fans in attendance, and I'm sure some other SEC schools are going to have fans in attendance of these football games, which also means tailgates are going to be happening. Let's not be naive about this. We already know parties are happening on campus. Let's not be completely naive about this and say that these students aren't going to be doing tailgates still, especially if they're going to end up going to the game. They'll just find a place to do it. So good luck stopping that. But why is it safe for them to have football games with crowds but not vote? And why can't they just make the polling place, which if they're so worried about it being an enclosed space full of people, why not just use this gigantic football stadium that you must have fans in to play football as a polling place. Other cities are doing it. Other teams are doing it. I know the Dodgers are doing it. The Lakers are doing it. In fact, every NBA franchise is going to be using their stadium as a polling place. That was part of the agreement to come back and play after they did their work stoppage a couple weeks ago, when they just chose not to play and shook a lot of other sports and a lot of other leagues to do the same thing, at least for a weekend, which was a nice show of solidarity. Good to do in the wake of Jacob Blake's death. Or murder, I should say. How was I talking about all that? We got off. But back to the town halls, why the town halls are great. And these town halls particularly showed us the difference in the candidates, and it's a difference I think we're already fully aware of. And one is that Donald Trump is just so out of touch with people that he doesn't know how to actually listen to people. If you notice, whenever Donald Trump was listening to the questions from people and trying to find, you'll see that he was just trying to find little pieces of the questions he could cling on to get his, whatever piece of his message out there he wanted to, whatever it was. He did that very HR style, very company powwow style of active listening, where you just look for the place that you can hop in to make you and X company look better to the people in the room. And you could see him doing it, and you could watch him doing it, and you'll notice that Joe Biden did not do that. There were times when Joe Biden saw himself put on the spot, and you saw in Joe Biden's eyes that he was actually put on the spot, and he was going to have to find good reasonings and good ways to answer these people. There was a farmer last night who asked Joe Biden how he could support the Green New Deal, and it was actually kind of a testy back and forth at the start of it. She was a Trump voter, and he asked her, she'd said good evening, and he said, how you feeling now, after finding out that she was a Trump voter, and all she said was good evening and carried on. It was kind of a tense little moment, a little action for us last night during the Biden town hall. That was pretty ho-hum, TBH. But then she asked them, I think her family had a potato farm, I believe, potato farm in Pennsylvania, and she was talking about how they always go to the regulations. Democrats are doing these regulations that are hurting my farming, and I can't do farming. The Green New Deal is going to hurt my farming. So Joe Biden had to present her, I'm going to botch this somewhere. Explain to her how the Green New Deal would create agriculture jobs, and they would be jobs eliminating methane and manure to make the farming that she's doing more energy efficient and more conscious to the earth itself, so we don't rot it to death with methane, and talk about how the government was going to lease more land to them so they could do more planting to make up for the additional costs and X, Y, and he went through the plan and all of that. But even while listening to this person, you could tell that he took in the question and had to find the right answer for this question, whereas Trump, whenever he would get a question, he would just look for where he could blame Obama, or where he could say that something else had gone wrong that caused him to be in this place. It was just staggering to watch that difference, and I think it showed that there is a difference in the two people. Whereas, yes, Joe Biden has been a lifelong politician for years. Joe Biden is not an isolated old man, despite what the Trump campaign has been trying to paint him as for the better part of the entire campaign, and even way back into the primaries. They're trying to do this whole, oh, he's got dementia, this, that, and another thing. And then here's Joe Biden fighting off being called an anti-vaxxer by explaining how vaccines and RNA work, and doing it in a very sensible, understandable way. I learned something. I still have no idea how vaccines and RNA and lipids and all that come together. But he talked about it, and he seemed to understand it, and I like that. And I don't think Trump could even save lipids or RNA or any of that. I don't think he could ever figure out how to have that conversation. So putting them in contrast like that, in that setting, within days of each other, I think should be a good optic and a moving optic for a lot of voters that might still be on the fence. I know there's about 4% of voters, people say right now, that are still undecided. Everything Everybody else is pretty much decided aside from this 4%. If the 4% is watching and seeing Joe Biden versus Donald Trump interacting with regular Americans about issues that are impacting regular Americans, I think they see that Joe Biden is clearly the better candidate. Even if you don't agree completely with him, you at least see that, oh, this is a guy who at least knows how to listen, at least knows how to answer questions honestly. Because again, I mean, there were times where Biden was in a corner. He answered the question honestly. If the person didn't like the answer, that's the answer they got. Where, I mean, Trump just didn't do that. We didn't watch Trump's in its entirety. We caught the highlights on Twitter, as we do with Trump's things, because we try to avoid being lied to by all costs. And we know when we tune into a Trump anything, it's just going to be X lie about X situation that he's created for himself. So we don't really pay so much attention anymore to the Trump pressers and into all that jazz. So, but what you see in that kind of setting is just how different the two candidates are. And I think it's an edge Joe Biden has over Hillary Clinton, because I don't think Hillary Clinton was as good in that setting as Joe Biden is. I think Hillary Clinton actually was closer to Donald Trump in that setting. Not in terms of not in terms of politics and answers and stances, but in how they handled hearing from voters. You could even say that as the outsider at the time, Trump had an advantage to Hillary in that he got to take more shots. He was in more of Biden's place, whereas Hillary might have had to be a little more defensive because of her history in the past 5 years. Which was bonkers how much it was investigated and looked into in hindsight, but we'll move from that for now. So it's definitely a different tale, and it's different town halls than it was before. But you see the advantage Biden has with regular folks than to Trump, because Trump clearly is an insulated man and has been an insulated man his entire life. I mean, he's only known rich Manhattanites, and he's only known rich Manhattanites that actually hated him, but that's all he's ever known. Whereas Joe Biden, you can see, has known actual real folks in his life and is not that insulated old man that they're trying to sell him as, who's like trapped in this basement. And you'll notice that whenever, I know we're in coronavirus times right now, so there's not as many photo opportunities, but you never see Trump, even before this, taking pictures with voters that are just regular folk. There's not a lot of photos of him just like with regular people out there, like people in MAGA hats or people in Trump sweatshirts or anything like that. It's always with his rich supporters or with celebrities that like him, or like Kid Rock or something like that. Whereas with Joe Biden, there's still some photos of him out on the campaign trail, like at least interacting with staff members and not staff members, organizers in communities and members of communities. So there's at least some actual interaction with him out there on the campaign trail that you see him photograph with people that actually support him, whereas Trump, you only see the rich people that benefit from his policies and his authoritarianism, which we'll close out on here. So this week, it's been, we said at the start of the podcast, it's been a ass-backwards slip into authoritarianism for the past 4 years here in the United States. Just pick a thing that's happened, kids in cages, whatever, forced hysterectomies. We'll talk about that real quick. Over the past week, there was a whistleblower that came out and said that in the ICE detention camps, they're doing forced hysterectomies, which is literally what they were doing in concentration camps in Nazi Germany. So, like, maybe the U.S. government shouldn't fucking be doing that. Maybe the U.S. government shouldn't be locking up families and ripping families apart and ruining their ability to be families and create more of their family. Maybe we should not fucking do that, but I guess that's not for me to decide. But travel bans, sending federal troops into cities to round up protesters willy-nilly off the streets in marked vans, weaponizing police forces, playing into a narrative that the police are an oppressed group in society, so therefore they have been more inspired to fight back against what they consider their oppression, weaponizing, just the general weaponizing of whatever he has at his advantage against other folks. All that aside, and then you look at what he did this week, where he has come out and called for patriotic education, saying that he's going to start the 1776 Commission to teach American pride and to counter the anti-American education they're getting in America's public schools, where they're being taught to hate America and that their history isn't great and this and that, which, TBH, it's not that great. I mean, whenever you're a country pretty much exclusively built on the back of slavery, no matter where along the line you look, and that reality, it has to be taught in schools. And he's talked about, I don't have the article pulled up here, but he keeps talking about in government how they teach about privilege, and he's outlining that, and he's quoted here saying, "Our heroes will never be forgotten. Our youth will be taught to love America." Like, that's straight authoritarian talk. Once they start talking about how we're going to teach our kids the history of our country in schools and manipulating it to show only the rosy sides of it, you are living in authoritarianism. You are living in a tyrannical society where the government imposes how things are taught. The exact thing that that Republicans have been so scared of for years, since Obama was president, and he was gonna start teaching all of this hippy-dippy love stuff in schools and forcing our kids to hear about equality. Now all of that is coming back around to these people who are acting as if they're being oppressed in schools. And since we're not teaching the Civil War as a great coming together moment for our country and this and that, it's like, how fucking inept do we have to be, and how racist and white nationalist do you have to be to insist that in our schools the education system is one way? This is how you indoctrinate society. This is how you indoctrinate your citizens. This is how you change the complete direction of a country ideologically. I can never say ideologically. Why can't I say that word?
Ideological.
Yeah, I can never say ideological. I can never say ideologically. I never get it right.
You just said it right.
I just said it right that time, but I always stumble over that one. Thank you. Jeeps. Anyway. Jeeps. How'd you say it? Say it again.
Ideological?
Ideological.
Ideologically?
Ideological. Ideological. Ideologically. So by trying to change how patriotism and American history is taught in schools, he is trying to ideologically, yeah? Nice, alter the direction of the country. Because, yes, people are learning more about America's real history. People are starting to understand the benefits of white privilege. People are starting to understand the suppression of the black community. It's starting to all be learned and understood more fully. And that is something that scares racists and white nationalists like our president. So they are fighting against it now and trying to say that this is an attack on our country from within our country, from within our educational system. And for one thing, if I was a teacher, I'd say, hey, fuck you, man. I'm trying to teach the kids what they need to learn here, and they need to learn the truth, not what you're trying to peddle here, big boy. So we have that. But you lump that together with I wasn't that anti-cop in the segment, was I? Was I that anti-cop in the segment? Was that ambulance or was that cops?
It's usually an ambulance around here.
Yeah, it's true.
Fire truck. We live near a fire station.
We do live near a fire station. We like fire trucks.
We stand with firefighters.
We like fire trucks. Anyway.
Hate fires.
Hate fires. Love the... Hate fires. Love the men. Love the people who fight them. Well, anyway, let me resituate here. What was I talking about? Authoritarianism, education in schools. What else are we doing this week? Oh, we're banning TikTok. That's right, we're banning TikTok and what's it called? WeChat?
That one I haven't heard of. Is that
WeChat?
like a WhatsApp type of thing?
Yeah, it's like a WhatsApp thing that they use in other countries to communicate with people in the United States and around their countries. It's used a lot in... Watch out. It's used a lot in, like, the Middle East and parts of Asia where communication is not so easy, where Wi-Fi is not as accessible, and just where cell companies are just less there, you know. Anyway, So a lot of people use third-party apps to communicate, and a lot of people like the encryption it welcomes them. It's a little bit more. It's a little bit more secure than I guess you could say a regular texting network is, or I don't know how the fiber optics work, or how the whatchamacallits and the whoosy whatsits do such and such with the text messages. I don't get all of it. But I know these are apps, I know these are companies that people use to communicate, and I know people love their TikToks. You love your TikToks. And I know the TikTok teens trolled Trump pretty hard with his... TikTok teens trolled Trump pretty hard with his Tulsa Trump rally.
Wow, tongue twister.
Yeah, you saw that, right? I just came up with that one. Write that one down. Put that one in the books. So, and he didn't care about TikTok until then. Can we just be plain about this? He didn't give a shit about TikTok until they bought out all the tickets or said they were all coming to his Tulsa event and got his hopes up, and then broke his little heart.
Can I just add that TikTok has been around for like a long time, because before it was TikTok, it was called Musical.ly, and Musical.ly has been around since like right after Vine ended. So TikTok, the company and the concept of this app, has been around for like 5 years already.
It's nothing new, and if you think it's new, you're clearly a big dork. Like honestly.
Well, it's just funny that it's so clear he's only starting to care now because, like, he's not well liked as a whole on TikTok.
Yeah.
Like, he clearly didn't care 5 years ago or when he came into office too much about it.
And then we have to realize that, though, the only reason he gets away with doing this to TikTok, because again, we have to remember that he's shutting down these apps. He's not shutting down the apps. So how it works is starting Saturday, this Saturday, February the 19th, right? It's February. Shoot me. Somebody come shoot me immediately. September. Jesus Christ.
I didn't even pick up on it.
Oh my God.
I believed you. I was like, of course.
Yeah, of course, February, yeah. No, so this fucking Saturday, September 19th, you officially can't download, you won't be able to download WeChat or TikTok from any of the app stores anymore. So existing users will still be able to use their TikToks and their WeChats and make their content and absorb their content and this, that, and whatever's happening over there on those apps. They'll be able to do that. However, they won't be able to install the latest updates or anything to their apps that they're using, thus making them liabilities to keep on their devices, thus forcing people not to use them anymore. Essentially banning the use of these two apps in the United States, even though they've done nothing wrong. Technically, they've done nothing wrong. I know. We're getting to this part. The only reason Trump gets away with this against TikTok and WeChat is because they are. And I'm not even sure it's this fully. I know they're Chinese-based companies, though they don't operate exclusively out of China. I think I said that right. So they get away with doing it because they say it's a national security matter, that TikTok is used to spy on U.S. citizens by the Chinese government. That's why they get away with doing this, even though this is the kind of thing that would happen in a country during a mass uprising. We saw it last year in, oh shoot, why can't I remember? Was it the Sudan? Uganda? We saw it in the Middle East. We've seen it anytime there's a coup in a country or in a city. The entire Arab Spring, 2008, all of that, the communication happens over social media and over these encrypted apps like WeChat, and on TikTok, if you want to go that far. So what countries will do whenever they realize that the citizens are speaking and organizing too fast and too frequently and too effectively for them to keep up with and to continue suppressing, they'll either turn off the Wi-Fi completely, or they'll start banning apps and banning networks and banning platforms. That way they cannot be used. It's literally what countries do whenever they see an uprising happening in their streets, and they're trying to stop it from happening because they want to hold on to their authoritarian powers in said country. Pile that with the president's efforts this week to again take away the legitimacy of the vote. You have yourself a full-on dead sprint into authoritarianism that we are literally at the doorstep of at this point. Because then, if you want to get even more scared, let's talk about William Barr this week. Can
I ask a quick question, please,
go ahead.
that I think would benefit the listeners? Can you explain the difference between authoritarianism and fascism, or do they go together?
They're the same thing. It's pretty much
okay.
different terms for it. I'm sure somebody out there is going, "Oh, Vince is getting it wrong. But it's probably if there is a difference, it's a very minor difference. Either is a thing you don't want to be a part of. Mm-hmm. Fascism, I know, is based a lot. Fascism gets thrown around a lot whenever it's like a hateful, oppressive regime that like genocides a lot, and it often gets adopted to fascism, whereas authoritarian.
So also like what's happening.
Yeah. So exactly. So the 6 of one, half dozen of the other, whatever they say. I think I used that right.
You did.
Did I use that right?
Yeah. They're basically the same thing, just different names.
What a podcast for me, huh? Using these fucking phrases and all that cheaps. Anyway, right now we're seeing that we are fully at the front door of authoritarianism, and it's why, and I know we're all mad because all the libs on Twitter keep saying vote. That's it. That's the tweet. But this is why it is important this election that we get out the vote, and we remember to not expect results on election night, and just prepare, I guess, man. That's all you can do. Horrifying times, but we have gone full on into authoritarianism at this point. And once you start suppressing the way people communicate, and you start indoctrinating the kids and changing the way history is taught in schools, or seeking to do such, literally the most unpatriotic and un-American thing you can do is tell someone how to think, how to feel, how to speak, and how to love their country. I love my country, but I also notice that it's not great all the time, and that's okay. I don't think.
Say something?
Yeah, get over here.
I think, and many people have said this better than me before, but I think the best way to express loving your country is to constantly want it to be better and to be the best it can be. And I don't think that not ever criticizing your country and saying that it's perfect, that's not patriotism, that's nationalism. Yeah. I think that's Trump's calling it patriotism. What he really wants is nationalism, though.
And he wants to whitewash history. He wants to turn it into this. This is what history is. It's this alt-right, conservative, QAnon version of history. And it's horrifying. And we're to that point. And to close things off here, you have Attorney General William Barr, who himself is also working to discredit the vote already, which means that we are literally barreling toward a 14th constitutional crisis here in the past 3 years, so buckle up for a couple more weeks. Hopefully the polling keeps being good, because that's been really the only thing keeping me optimistic. Otherwise, it's a hellscape, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back next Friday with more and another thing. I hope this rendition recorded. I have to say, this is our second take of our 101st episode of and another thing. The first take, there's a pop-up. It was a whole big thing, but otherwise, after that, it didn't record anything, so you're welcome to part 2, so enjoy. Check us out. You made it this far. Subscribe. See you next week. Have a good